I have no excuse. I've spent the last week and a half obsessing over economics, politics, philosophy, insurance, moving expenses, living expenses, wedding expenses, only some of which having to do with YouTube. I'll let you decide which for yourselves. The point is, I needed a day to decompress, and for some reason this took the form of me binge-watching Let's Plays of the old Freddy Fish and Nancy Drew games. Near the end of one marathon, for reasons knowable only to the high priests of the Omnissiah's Valoris Actuarium Chapel, the algorithm decided to throw this video convo about childhood crushes into my suggestion feed. And after watching it, I started to reflect on my own nostalgic fantasy paramours. And then I thought, you know what? Screw it, why not? Everyone still likes a good old top 10 list, don't they? The only problem is that, upon further inspection, this subject's been pretty thoroughly covered by other YouTubers since for once, it seems I'm not alone in my prepubescent fascination with marriageable and/or breedable cartoon characters. For instance, everyone's got their classic wolf whistle baits like Mrs. Incredible, Kim Possible, Raven and Starfire, Sam from Danny Phantom, pretty much any female characters from Pokemon, Dragon Ball or Naruto, and so on. And though many are far less inclined to admit it, most everyone also has at least one fur affinity character they remember fondly in a less than platonic sense, be it Lola Bunny, Roxanne, Maid Marian, Nala, etc. Now, I won't waste time on disclaimers like, this is just my list, do whatever you want, because I've been on the internet long enough to know it won't matter. However, I will say that some of these might lean a little more toward the hear me out side, since I've racked my brain to try to come up with ones that don't already feature in every other publicly facing goon cave in cyberspace. Also, I just realized in post that there's a secret pattern to these choices. Let's see if you can spot it as we go along. Number 10. Flora from Tak and the Power of Juju. I don't really have much to say on this one apart from the fact that she's got tomboy energy, she's got magical juju powers, she's got a pocket form, and she has a twin sister, Flora. Also, just to spare people the effort of commenting, I'm including the moon juju here as an honorable mention. The only reason I didn't make her the official entry is because she reminds me entirely too much of my actual mother, and while I'll freely admit I'm hardly a vanilla Christian Boy Scout when it comes to my atypical interests, I'm not so far removed from Jesus that I split my rent and utilities bill with Oedipus. Now before we get a little too Freudian up in here again, let us move on. Number 9. Aelita from Code Lyoko. Something I'm learning about myself as I'm compiling this list. Unless a character was actually explicitly shown in a romantic context in their parent media, my childhood self simply didn't register them as a potential partner. While I liked girls like Kim, Sam, Gwen, Katara, Starfire, and so on just fine as characters in their own rights, for some reason them being featured as prominent spell-slinging, gadget-toting badasses just disabled the husbandly inclinations in my prepubescent mind. And though if this were a smash or pass video, they'd easily be the entire lead component in the running, even now I can't honestly say I'd consider them more than friends with benefits at the very best. And after taking a minute to sit and ponder, I think I finally figured out why that is. As a kid, I'll confess I was somewhat fond of Yumi, her 25 head notwithstanding. But as an adult, I understand this was nearly entirely owed to my seeing something of myself in Ulrich, and therefore I projected myself into their relationship. However, while Aelita never really resonated with me as a kid, post hoc I recognize that she's pretty much a child-friendly version of Cortana. Being a computer program, she comes with all the pros and cons that you'd expect, and I'm pretty sure they eventually managed to give her a human, or at least humanoid body, so there's that ground covered too. Or even if I am misremembering, there'll always be her in VR. The reason she's so low on the list is because she has the unfortunate downside of being a Code Lyoko character, meaning her personality's about as interesting as a shallow swimming pool. Not offensive by any means, but not exactly core memory material either. Number 8. Applejack from My Little Pony. Friendship is magic. Before anyone says anything, I'm not now and nor have I ever been a brony. However, as a consequence of being both the babysitter and default amusement source of a little sister, I know more about horses, magic, and magical horses than any straight male otherwise should. The only reason I took any interest in this particular iteration of the ponies is because I happened to catch a part of one episode where one of the MCs shot a laser beam out of their horn, and I thought, okay, fine, I'll bite. As far as childhood crushes go, however, due to my exposure being limited to the parts about flames and explosions, the pickings weren't exactly cornucopian, especially to somebody who couldn't have cared less about girls if you'd paid me to. However, if I had to retroactively pick one, it would probably be Applejack. Being one of the few ponies in the bunch to lack any sort of magical abilities, Applejack relies on her grassroots logic and, when necessary, her actual physical strength to solve most of her problems. She's not as hot-headed as Rainbow Dash, not as snobby as Rarity, not as smooth-brained as Pinkie Pie or as dainty as Fluttershy. She doesn't have emotional or royal baggage like Luna and Celestia, and while I identify with Twilight on a personal level, we're actually far too similar for us to actually work as a couple, the whole bestiality thing notwithstanding. Plus, Applejack's got that warm southern charm about her that never fails to loosen a few buttons in all senses. Number 7. Vette from the Old Republic MMO. It wouldn't be one of my videos unless I found some way to bring Star Wars into it. The problem is, who do I talk about that hasn't already been discussed to death by every other nerd on Earth? All the favorites are favorites for a reason. Padme, Ahsoka, Leia, Shakti, Bastila, Darth Talon, etc. Even Juno Eclipse has been given her hour in the sun, even if it was somewhat less illustrious than most on account of her having never actually been featured even holding a blaster, let alone wielding a lightsaber. And the more I looked at it, the more I realized that females in Star Wars either fall into the epic hero camp right alongside the men, or their totally forgettable background or side characters hardly anyone bothers to remember outside of their immediate instances of plot relevance. That said, I think I've found one that nicely slots between being too girl-bossy for anyone's good, including her own, and so demure that she becomes a forgettable wall ornament. While I obviously didn't play the Old Republic MMO as a kid on account of it having come out when I was in high school, and in terms of story and drama, I'm more partial to the Sith warrior Jaza romance arc. If I'm choosing who's going to be the future Mrs. Wolf, I'd have to go with Vette since she's more stable and grounded, i.e., less prone to psychotic outbursts and emotional tirades than a Sith apprentice. So apart from being literally the lesser of two evils, Vette's also got pretty much every quality you could want in a wife. She's cute. She's kind, she's capable, she's loyal, and when you meet her, she's wearing a shock collar, which, when you remove it, she keeps. Do with that what you will. Number 6. Maid Marian from Disney's Robin Hood. Okay, full disclosure. She was my first childhood crush. The reason I put her below the 50% mark on my list is because it's a little cliché and because I simply couldn't justify putting the others any lower. I don't know what more I could say that hasn't already been said about her. For someone who wants a kind, comforting support pillow to come home to, that's not going to be jockeying with you for house space, but is also perfectly capable of coping with whatever political or paranormal nonsense follows you home, Marian's your girl. Number 5. Amber from Dink the Little Dinosaur. Just in case it wasn't apparent enough that I'm into female Lancers, here's a bit more proof. Not many people know that Hanna-Barbera did a Land Before Time spin-off the year after Don Bluth established the formula. And if I'm being intellectually honest, there's a number of objective reasons for that, notwithstanding the latter's vast box office shadow. Basically, she's everything I just said Maid Marian was. The one thing which sets her up higher in my book is that while Marian's more of a backline relief sort of player, Amber's more of a frontline support class, meaning she can actually tag along with you on your adventures instead of waiting to hear about them back at the castle. While I personally consider these two pretty much equal in terms of quality, this is a top 10 list, not a round table circle jerk, so Amber takes the lead, if only by a finger's width. Number 4. Vixey from Fox and the Hound. Again, I don't really have much to say. Apart from being cute, she's comparable to Todd in all ways. Granted, I realize this is due to Fox's lower sexual dimorphism, but still, only lacking in the male aggression and ego departments, which to me makes her the ideal supporting partner. Again, the whole she's literally just a fox issue notwithstanding. Number 3. Angel from Lady and the Tramp 2. It was a toss-up between her and Kiara from Simba's Pride, but then I put more than 2 brain cells to work on it and realized it was no contest. Angel has all of Kiara's features and none of her weaknesses. Kiara can't hunt or fight to save her life, almost literally, while Angel spent the majority of her life surviving as a feral junkyard dog. And despite this less than hospitable upbringing and lifestyle, she still manages to retain her feminine civility and charm. If that's not indicative of some strong personal grit, I don't know what is. Although the only issue is that it's a little bit ambiguous as to how old she's supposed to be. On the one hand, she develops a romantic relationship with Scamp, who's most likely the dog-year equivalent of a 12 to 14-year-old. But on the other hand, the leader of the junkyard dogs repeatedly calls her baby and refers to her as his girl, despite being equivalent in age to Scamp's father. Either way, I put her this far up on the list for her personality, not her sex appeal, so let's just do what we do with the Lion King and not think about the dubious implications too much for our own good. Number 2. Mistress Kilda from Overlord 2. While I believe the Overlord anime firmly deserves every ounce of the love and praise that it gets, it saddens me that its prominence within the nerdosphere has overshadowed this stylistic icon of mid-2000s gaming. While I only ever played the first installment of this series as a kid, and never even knew it was a series until I was a senior in high school, after watching several playthroughs, I can appreciate every member of the Overlord's harem for what they're all worth. However, in my opinion, despite one of the two who has more upstairs than in front being a literal queen, I have to go with the OG tsundere. Not only is she a spicy red-haired tomboy with curves that'd make many Latinas blush, she's also the Overlord's most loyal and genuine companion, having literally been on and by his side from day one. And if there's ever going to be a singular defining trait that's going to move a woman up from sleeper to keeper status, it's loyalty. Oh, and she gives your brown minions rideable wolves for the final mission. So yeah, she's my number 2, hands down. But how, you may wonder, can we possibly do better than a hot, wolf-taming, loyal bed buddy? Well, number 1, Mistress Rose from Overlord 1. I admit, when I started to make this list, I didn't expect this would be a hot take. But apparently there's a legitimate debate in the Overlord fan space about whether Rose or Kilda is best mistress. Though as far as I can tell, it mostly boils down to people who prefer the big titty goth GF and those who like their British Sunder mommy better. Personally, while I'd usually land more on the former side of the fence, in this particular case, Velvet's just way too much of a spoiled little brat to have any sort of committal value to me. Rose, on the other hand, values commitment and loyalty just like Kilda, but she's equally capable of taking command of the Dark Tower in your absence.
So this is your tower? It could use a bit of work. Give me a chance to spruce up the place a little, then come on up. I'll put the kettle on. Ah, there you are. This place isn't what I'm normally used to, but one has to make the best of things, I suppose. Let me show you around. Not much to look at here, but nothing that a really good dust wouldn't cure. Now, this could be a great space. A bedroom, a banqueting area, even your own private interrogation room. I think that this area would make an adorable treasure vault. I think the lighting would set off your riches wonderfully. You do have riches, don't you? Now, this is the nerve center of your evil domain. I've created a scale model of your tower out of bits and bobs I found lying around. I'm very resourceful.
Unlike Velvet, she's not inherently evil, although she's a bit of a control freak and taskmaster, so maybe not the best choice for somebody whose career ambitions don't reach so far as ruling the entire world with an iron fist. Though what really won me to her was the maternal, almost playful relationship she has with the minions.
I'd better get up there. Wouldn't want those little dears eating my things and getting a tummy ache.
Particularly the Browns, which are the mainline fighting force of the Overlord's horde. The fact that she can upgrade these and the Blues, who are your healers, with 50% additional armor for the final mission is a very handy side bonus as well. She also has that dry sort of cocky British humor, which I've always been partial to. Plus, in the sequel, we see that she's learned some magical tricks and powers of her own along the way. All of which makes her, in my eyes, the supreme sort of Bonnie to the Overlord's Clyde if you're into that sort of thing. And of course she's the canonically correct choice, so there's that. So that became much more of a thing than I thought it'd be. I'd originally expected it to be a light breezy, hey, isn't this neat sort of vacation-y video that'd take up 1 to 2 pages max. Instead, I got a minor self-discovery essay that's probably exposing more of myself to a bunch of randos on the internet than even my friends and family know about. But hey, we're here now, so why not all just look up at the stars together and think at least I'm not stuck on some billionaire's island forced to sleep with middle-aged men for money. Allegedly. But that's all just my opinion, as always. Now let's hear some of your obscure childhood crushes down in the comments. And of course, while you're there, if you'd be so kind as to like and subscribe if you haven't already, buy my books, either on Amazon or on Patreon, join up as a member, or follow me on one or both of these alternative platforms to give Big Brother YouTube the finger. And until next time, my friends, as usual, stay safe, stay sane, and remember, life's too short to take seriously. Peace be upon you.